I never imagined that one small choice, one simple decision to do something playful and lighthearted, would lead me into the darkest truth of my life. That day, I only wanted to surprise my son. Nothing more, nothing less. I thought it would be fun to hide in his car, wait for him to discover me, and see the expression on his face when I jumped out. I thought he would laugh, maybe hug me, maybe roll his eyes and say, "Mom, you're so dramatic." I thought it would be just another silly memory between a mother and her boy. But instead, what I saw in that car changed me forever. It was a sunny afternoon. The kind of day that feels ordinary, harmless. I had been cleaning the kitchen, folding laundry, and watching the clock tick toward the hour when my son would leave. He told me he was heading out to meet a study group. He'd used those words before, and I never questioned them. Why would I? He was a good kid, responsible, polite, the kind of son any mother would be proud of. But something tugged at me that day. A strange restlessness. I brushed it off at first, but the thought clung to me. What if I surprised him? What if I hid in his car and gave him a reason to laugh? It sounded harmless, sweet even. And so I did. I slipped out the door, heart fluttering with mischief, and quietly climbed into the back seat of his car. I crouched low, knees bent uncomfortably, and waited. My chest thudded with nervous excitement, and I covered my mouth to stifle a giggle. I imagined his reaction, his startled yelp turning into laughter. But the laugh never came. Instead, I heard his footsteps approaching. The car door opened, and he slid into the driver's seat. He didn't start the engine right away. He just sat there, breathing slowly, almost nervously. Then another door opened, the passenger side. A woman got in. Her perfume hit me first, sweet and heavy, filling the air in a way that made my stomach churn. I peeked through the narrow space between the seats, and my heart nearly stopped. She wasn't a friend. She wasn't a classmate. She was older. Much older. Too old to be sitting there looking at my son with those eyes. She was closer to my age than his. And then, right there in front of me, my son leaned in and kissed her. The sound of that kiss pierced me like a knife. My hand shot to my mouth, and I held my breath so tightly it hurt. My world spun in that moment. My son. My baby. Kissing a woman who could have been his mother's peer. I wanted to scream, to leap out and demand answers. But I froze. My body refused to move, and my ears became traitors, forcing me to hear every word that followed. She whispered to him, "You know this can't last forever." And his reply shattered me. "I know, but I can't let my mother find out. If she does, it will destroy everything." My chest constricted, and hot tears filled my eyes. He was hiding from me. He was living a secret life right under my nose. The son I thought I knew so well was a stranger sitting just feet away from me. They talked more, voices low, words tangled in secrecy and desire. Each sentence felt like another dagger driven into me. And then I realized something that chilled my blood. She wasn't just some woman. She was married. She mentioned her husband, her boring life at home, how my son was her escape. My son, my only son, was having an affair with a married woman. I bit down so hard on my lip that I tasted blood. My hands trembled, my mind screamed, but I stayed hidden. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just listened, every second unraveling the image I had built of the boy I raised. When they finally drove off, I remained crouched there, silent, tears streaming down my face. Every laugh they shared, every touch, every word about hiding from me carved itself into my memory. By the time the car stopped in front of a quiet street, and they slipped out together, hand in hand, I knew I was no longer looking at my little boy. I was looking at a man I didn't recognize. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed it over and over, the kiss, the whispers, the lies. How long had this been happening? Who was this woman really? And why? Why hadn't my son trusted me enough to tell me anything? I wanted to confront him immediately. I wanted to scream, to demand answers. But something inside me whispered, wait. Watch. Learn before you act. So I waited. Days turned into weeks. I began noticing things I had missed before. The late nights. The vague excuses. The new clothes he hadn't asked me to help buy. The secretive glances at his phone. He wasn't the boy I thought I knew. And the woman, Oh, the woman. I couldn't get her face out of my mind. Who was she? Why would she choose him? Why risk everything for a boy young enough to be her son? So one evening, while he was out, I followed him. My heart pounded the entire time, my hands clammy on the steering wheel as I stayed just far enough behind. He drove across town to a quiet neighborhood. He parked. And then she appeared, slipping out of her house like a thief, her hair tied back, her eyes darting nervously. She ran to his car and climbed in. My throat tightened as I watched them drive off together. I didn't follow this time. I couldn't. The weight of it all crushed me. But I wasn't ready for what came next. One evening, he came home late. His eyes were red, his face pale. He slipped quietly into his room, but I could hear him crying. My heart twisted. Despite everything, he was still my son. I knocked on his door, but he didn't answer. The sound of his sobs tore me apart, and I wanted nothing more than to hold him like I had when he was little. The next morning, I found a letter on the kitchen table. It was addressed to me. My hands shook as I opened it. His handwriting wavered across the page. Mom, I'm sorry for all the lies. I didn't know how to tell you. I've been seeing someone. I know it's wrong. I know you won't understand. But I need you to trust me. Please don't hate me. I dropped the letter, my knees giving out. Tears blurred the words, but the message was clear. He knew this was wrong, yet he was drowning in it. That was the day I made my choice. I had to confront him. I had to bring the truth into the light, no matter how much it hurt. So that evening, when he came home, I sat him down. My hands trembled, my voice cracked, but I looked him in the eyes and said, I know. His face went pale. His lips parted, but no words came. The silence stretched until finally, tears spilled down his cheeks. He collapsed into the chair, burying his face in his hands. I didn't want you to find out this way, he whispered. Who is she? I asked, my voice shaking. And when he told me her name, my heart stopped. Because I knew her. She wasn't just any woman. She wasn't just older. She wasn't just married. She was someone I once called a friend. A woman I had trusted, laughed with, shared dinners and secrets with. And now she was the one destroying my family from the inside out. I can't even describe the storm that raged inside me then. Anger, betrayal, grief, shame. It was as if the ground had split open, and everything I knew was tumbling into darkness. But even then, even in my fury, I looked at my son and saw the broken boy he still was inside. The boy who had made a terrible mistake, who had been pulled into something far beyond his understanding. And I knew, this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. I sat there, staring at my son, my chest heavy with anger and heartbreak, yet beneath it all, an unshakable pull of love. No matter how much he hurt me, he was still mine. The boy I carried, the boy I raised. The boy who now sat trembling before me, his hands clutching at his face as if to hide from the weight of his choices. The name he had just spoken burned in my ears. Her. The woman who once walked through my home, sipping tea at my table, laughing in my kitchen, asking me for recipes. My so-called friend. And all this time, she had been sitting across from me with a smile while secretly slipping into my son's life like poison. Why her? My voice cracked as the words tumbled out. He looked at me with red, swollen eyes. I don't know. I didn't mean for it to happen. She listened to me. She understood me in ways I thought no one else did. I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to scream. To tell him he had betrayed me in the worst possible way. To tell him this wasn't love, it was manipulation. But the sight of him, fragile, guilty, ashamed, stopped me. I realized this wasn't just his sin. It was hers. She's married. I whispered, my hands trembling. She has a family. And she was my friend. He lowered his head, shame radiating off him. I know, but I can't stop. Every time I try, she pulls me back. And I let her. The tears finally broke free, hot and relentless, rolling down my cheeks. My son was trapped. Not just in his own choices, but in a web spun by a woman who should have known better. That night, I lay awake, torn between two unbearable truths. My son was guilty, but she was the one who had crossed every boundary. She was the adult. She was the one who preyed on him, fed his loneliness, and turned it into something dangerous. Days passed in a blur. I went through the motions of daily life, but inside, I was unraveling. I couldn't decide what hurt more, my son's betrayal or hers. The thought of confronting her churned in my stomach. But the more I thought, the more I realized I had to. So one evening, when I knew she would be home alone, I went to her house. My fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, her face paled. "Aren't you going to invite me in?" I asked, my voice like ice. She stepped aside silently. The moment I walked in, memories of laughter and shared evenings stabbed at me. But now every corner of her home felt tainted. "I know," I said simply, turning to face her. "I know about you and my son." Her lips parted, her eyes darting, but no words came. She didn't deny it. She didn't even look surprised. She just stood there, caught, like a thief in the light. "How could you?" My voice broke as the question poured out. "How could you betray me like this? Betray your husband? Betray your own family?" She swallowed hard. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't plan it." He was there. He listened. He cared in ways no one else did. I was lonely. Lonely. I spat the word like poison. "So you destroy my son to fill your emptiness?" Her eyes glistened with tears, but I felt no sympathy. My pain was too raw, too deep. "You've ruined him," I whispered. "You've twisted him into something he's not. He's a boy. My boy." She flinched but still said nothing. I left her house that night with fire in my chest and ice in my veins. I knew this couldn't continue. But the question clawed at me. Should I tell her husband? Should I expose her? Or would that only drag us all deeper into the pit she had dug? For weeks I wrestled with it. Meanwhile, my son grew quieter, more distant. The joy in his eyes had dimmed. He was drowning, and I didn't know how to pull him out. And then came the night that changed everything again. I woke to the sound of the front door creaking open. I slipped out of bed and looked down the hall, just in time to see him sneaking out. My heart pounded. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and followed him. He drove across town, back to that same quiet neighborhood. He parked near her house. But this time, when she came running out, something was different. Her face was frantic, her movements rushed. She climbed into his car, and I could see the panic in her gestures even from where I sat hidden in the shadows. They drove off, and this time I followed. Street after street blurred past, until they pulled into a motel. A cheap, dimly lit place on the edge of town. My stomach twisted as I watched them disappear inside together. I sat there in the dark, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, rage boiling inside me. This was no longer just an affair. It was an obsession, a dangerous spiral that was dragging my son deeper into ruin. Hours later, when they finally emerged, I saw something that froze my blood. They weren't just holding hands. She was clutching a small bag, and the way she glanced over her shoulder, the fear in her eyes, it hit me like lightning. She was running away. With him. The drive back home was a blur of tears and fury. By the time I stumbled into my room, I knew I had to act. If I didn't, I would lose him completely. The next morning, I confronted him again. I told him I had followed him. I told him I knew everything. He broke down sobbing, telling me she had begged him to leave with her, to start over somewhere far away. "Mom, I don't know what to do," he cried, his voice trembling. "I love her, but I don't want to hurt you." His words cut me to pieces. I wanted to shake him, to scream that this wasn't love, that it was a trap. But instead, I held him. I held my son as he wept like the child he once was. And in that moment, I realized something. If I didn't save him from this woman, I would lose him forever. So I made my choice. I told her husband. The explosion that followed was swift and brutal. Her marriage collapsed overnight. Her husband stormed into my house, demanding answers, his voice shaking with fury. My son stood frozen, pale and broken, as the truth ripped open. And she vanished. She left town, left her husband, left her job, left everything behind. And with her departure came a silence that lingered in our lives for months. But silence didn't mean peace. My son was shattered. He barely ate. He barely spoke. He wandered through the house like a ghost. I tried everything. Cooking his favorite meals, sitting by his side, reminding him every day that I loved him. But grief clung to him like a shadow. One night, as I tucked him in like I used to when he was small, he whispered, "Mom, will you ever forgive me?" My heart cracked. I brushed his hair back and kissed his forehead. "There's nothing you could do that would ever make me stop loving you. You are my son. Always." The road to healing was long, but slowly, day by day, I began to see flickers of the boy I knew. The laughter returned in fragments. The light in his eyes flickered back to life. He began to rebuild himself, brick by fragile brick. And I too learned something. I learned that betrayal doesn't just come from enemies. It comes from those you trust most. I learned that love, twisted and poisoned, can destroy lives. But I also learned that a mother's love, no matter how battered, can hold on through the darkest storms. Because in the end, despite everything, he is my son. And nothing will ever change that.